Alan, I've done something I'm not sure you're going to be happy with.
Play the theme music. Welcome to this episode of Tripology. I'm Alan, and I'm here with the ever superstitious Adam.
Do you believe in the supernatural, Al?
Ghosts, schools, phantoms, witches, I love them all, baby. They're a big part of my life, yeah. Why are you so superstitious for?
Well, it's not me, but as we know, I'm on this road trip around Rajasthan, and we left last week on a high, lol. And we've been driving around. We've been driving around the Rajasthan, the state of Rajasthan desert as well, the Thar Desert, having some cultural immersive experiences. And I've been exposed to a couple of superstitions, which have been quite cool, because when you're an outsider and you are traveling around, you do come across these sorts of things, whether it's through sort of tradition or history or religion, and I mean, it's difficult to really understand as an outsider where it's sort of derived from or where it originates from. But what happened recently, we were going down the road. You know, I told you about that sort of trip we went on last week. If you haven't heard that episode yet, do go back and check it out. But that little sort of morning tour we went on around a local village. On the way back from that tour, when we were being driven by the gentleman's brother I mentioned, he slammed the brakes on going down an open road. And I mean, I almost hit the chair in front of me.
Really?
I couldn't see that there was a car there or anything. So I sort of poked my head round and said, oh God, what is it? And he pointed in front of the car, and it was a mongoose that was just plodding along in front of the car and then went off the road into the bushes.
Nice. I saw my first mongoose in Sri Lanka, so they're cool to see. They're not what you expect, are they?
No, I thought it was a lizard.
You thought a mongoose was a type of lizard?
No. When I saw it, when he pointed it out and he said, that's a mongoose, I thought it was a lizard even after him telling me it was a mongoose.
Okay, it didn't appear mammalian to you. It appeared scaly and sort of...
Well, it was like roughly the size of a very small monitor lizard, and it went off into the bushes. And the driver said to me, we do have to wait here for 5 minutes now. It would be bad luck. It would be bad luck for us to continue driving. What we have to do is actually wait here until another car passes us and crosses the road where it was.
He's actually going to seek the permission of the Mongoose Committee to see if it's okay for us to pass. He'll be back with a response in 5 to 10 minutes. It's annoying when you meet a mongoose, those bureaucratic little bastards, isn't it? They're always going off to speak to a committee.
There's a backlog. But yeah, that was so sort of alien to me. I just thought, oh, well, how strange. So we basically got to sit there in the desert in the beating sun, waiting for another car to go past. And, you know, to be fair to him, as soon as another car did pass us, we jumped back in the car and then we went on. And I thought, I wonder what they think would happen if we had just driven, if we had been the first car past the mongoose. But that wasn't the only time it happened.
To be fair to him, because it would have been a nightmare if the car had passed and he just slowly turned around to you with cynical eyes, shook his head solemnly. No, I lied before when I said we have to wait for another car. We have to wait for 5.
He's a man of his word. But Lukesh, the famous Lukesh, who is our lovely driver and now friend, if I may, we were driving very late at night, and this drive will actually feature in the second half of the episode because, mate, it was a mess. I think I texted you at the time. A very crazy 24 hours for us, unfortunately. Yeah. But we were driving down a mountain road through a national park, and again, brakes were slammed on because there was a car that was in the road. This is very late at night, about 1 a.m. There was a car that was parked sort of sideways across the road with its headlights shining on a corner of the road. And Lukesh slammed his brakes on again. And I thought, what are you doing? It's 1 o'clock at night. We're down a dark road. There's one car here. There's no one else around. Don't stop. Just keep going. And he said, no, sir, there's a snake. And I looked through the windscreen over the bonnet, and there was just this little snake that was sort of making its way across the road. I thought...
You thought it was a mongoose initially, I bet.
And I thought, why are we stopping for a snake? But I guess in sort of Hinduism, it has some level importance. I think Shiv's got a serpent around his neck often, hasn't he?
Yeah, Shiv does have a serpent around his neck, and also Vishnu has a big, like, many-headed snake that represents the passage of time. I mean, I bet you thank God it wasn't a mongoose at that time of night. You've been waiting there for hours, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
there won't be another car till morning.
But observing those cultural differences, I just thought it's 1:00 in the morning. It's pitch black. We'd already had a conversation about it not being that safe in this area anyway, because it wasn't a main highway. It was sort of a little road. And the driver and the friend I was with, they were speaking in Hindi, and I asked them to translate. And she said, yeah, I mean, it has been known that there has been some sort of incidents down roads like this in recent times where there are sort of gangs or robbers or whatever that are waiting in fields and stuff, and they just ambush certain cars. And I thought, well, in that case, why are we stopping for a snake? But maybe there are greater things at play that I don't quite understand, mate.
Well, that's it. And it's easy to step on those spiritual, superstitious toes, isn't it, when you're traveling sometimes? I remember when we were on that little boat tour in the mangroves, and I accidentally stepped on the front of the boat, and people started bursting into tears and saying, you've just stepped on God. God sits at the front of the boat. And it's difficult when you are told that you've just stepped on God and like people look at you with an accusatory fashion. It's quite difficult not to get defensive,
Yeah.
I kind of became a bit obstinate. I was like, I didn't step on God. That's just the front of a boat.
Would you want me to do a forwards roly-poly?
Yeah, you've got to spin 3 times and wait till morning. Difficult.
Is that a mongoose? No, it was it was one of those. So just had to be sort of accepting of it and realise that maybe my safety wasn't at danger until the snake safely passed. But yeah, I'm having a wonderful time, mate. I am. It's a lot of things are happening in quick succession, and I would really like to discuss something with you. I did allude to it at the beginning of the episode. I did something on this trip very recently, and I'm not sure you're going to be for it, but I made a decision, and overall I enjoyed it, and I'm going to talk to you about that now.
You think I might be against it? Do you think I might be against it morally, or as a travel philosophical practice? What was your concern?
I think even I'm against it, so I would imagine so.
Okay. Well, what should we do? If you tell me to me and I think it changes the way I feel about you and the podcast, do you want me to just carry on, or do you want me to
for the rest of our careers? Yeah, for the rest of our careers, just don't mention it. Let's sweep it under the carpet.
Okay. What have you done? If the next part of this episode is Alan's miscellaneous travel item, you know that Adam's done something terrible.
No, it was again pretty touristic, but we made our way to Jaisalmer, which is sort of right out in the desert, almost on the border with Pakistan.
Right.
So I was feeling pretty good about that. It was nice to be close to Pakistan again. But I'd seen pictures of Jaisalmer, and it is like Lawrence of Arabia type stuff, right? You've got these lovely sandy type buildings. It looks very old. It looks like something almost sort of medieval, bazaars, traders, old Silk Road, all this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And we stayed with this amazing, amazing couple who are running a hostel there. Again, more than happy to promote them. I'll put all their details in the description. They're lovely, lovely people. And they sorted out a little tour for us. So there's a couple of, as you can imagine, different options when it comes to tours. There's a pretty touristy tour, I would say. Even the one we chose was fairly touristy. But there was otherwise a little bit of a stripped back kind of desert night camping out on the dunes. And then you do a couple of other things as well while you're there. But we opted for that one. Now, part of that trip, in order to get out into the desert and onto the dunes, involved a camel ride.
Okay, I'm starting to piece things together. I'm starting to understand what happened. What kind of a camel was it? 2 hump or 1?
Just the one hump. I'm not sure how I would have felt about 2.
Yeah. when you do decide to throw your ethics to the wind and hop astride a camel, and it is 2 humps, do you sit in between the humps, or do you sit like with the first one behind you like a backrest?
Yeah, I think I would probably sit in the middle.
Yeah.
And then just make sure that I was also touching the one behind me, so that was also not feeling left out, as it were.
Yeah, because you know what they say. They say 2 humps for comfort, one hump for speed. So this was I mean, I assume you're basically coming out to me now. You're telling me that you rode a camel
Into the desert, onto the dunes. Yeah.
Okay.
And
now it's difficult for me to take the moral high ground as a man who has also ridden a camel before.
But was this before your ethics changed? Because we did have that discussion about whether riding a horse is that much better than riding an elephant, didn't we?
Yeah. This was, well, no, I still had ethics, but I've actually ridden a camel a few times. And each time that I've ridden a camel, it has been sort of with someone else who was very passionate about having the experience.
Nice. Externalize it, your fault.
Yeah, not my fault. No, but I do feel very conflicted about it. I do think it's wrong to ride a camel, but I also have been in situations where I'm like always on a tour and it's been like, okay, now's the camel riding portion of the tour. Here are the camels. Seems difficult as someone who essentially every week tells our audience that if they've ever thought about riding an elephant, they're essentially tantamount to criminals. No, I do think it's probably wrong to ride a camel, but I have done it.
Yeah. So I'll just talk to you a little bit about what happened. We went out into the desert, and the gentleman that was running the tour, he was just a local guy that's from a neighbouring village, and he took us to his actual house on the edge of the desert in this very, very small village. There's only about 70 people that live there, and they're living in sort of traditional houses that you find there, very, very small, usually with flat roofs. Everyone works in farming, agriculture of some sort. And we sat down, we had a lovely little tea with his family that he'd made with fresh goat's milk, like it.
Oh, God. The toll of animal servitude in this place just keeps on rising.
And then we made our way to the edge of the desert where we would pick up the camels. They were ready and waiting, bless them, with their saddles on and stuff.
Yeah, the goat had ridden the camel into work that morning.
And I did say, are these camels sort of well looked after? Are they your own camels and that kind of stuff? He said, what do you fucking care? No.
He said, no, badly, if anything, they are treated.
Yeah, they're treated really well, but not as well as the mongoose. And so we looked at these camels and I thought, do you know what? It's probably fine. If Alan's done it, I'm sure it's ethical. So
externalize it, not your fault.
Yeah. And I'd never ridden a camel before, but we do know from previous episodes I have lived and worked on a camel farm out in the desert in the outback in Australia. And I didn't ride a camel then, ironically. So jumped on this camel. The two camels, get this, the two camels were called Mr. India and Michael.
Who was your favourite?
Well, I was on Mr. India. So me and the guy were on Mr. India, and my friend, she was on Michael at the back.
Mr. India is capable of carrying 2 fully grown human adults.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're enormous animals, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Now, I'm interested to know what the audience thinks about this, because maybe there is an ethical delineation between riding a elephant and then riding something like a horse or a camel. I don't actually know.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've been persuaded by local people that they've had a relationship riding the camels for thousands of years, and they're, ships of the desert, and there's like a tradition, but I probably intuitively think it's wrong. And I would say it's probably something now I would shy away from doing, but I'd be interested if anyone in the audience knows more about it. You can write us a message on the website, tripologypodcast.com.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear people's thoughts. I'm glad you got in before this next bit, because what I realised shortly after boarding the camel was that the aforementioned hostel, the lovely couple that we stayed with in Jaisalmer, we had strategically put in all of our laundry to be done so that it was ready by the time we got back from this night out in the desert under the stars.
Which of the animals was doing your laundry?
No animals. Well, we just gave, you know what it's like, you just give the bag in and it comes back.
There was a
24 hours
python
later
in the back wringing the towels.
Yeah, usually when you're traveling, you give your bag of laundry, and then the next morning it comes back with about 50% of the clothes in. Yeah. So we gave all of the clothes away and then went on the tour. And then I realised after boarding the camel, I'd gone commando, mate, in my Sharwell camise. So I wasn't wearing
commando
any
in a
pants.
camise, right? Yeah. You were wearing the camise pants though. You just weren't wearing underwear. Yeah,
exactly.
thank God it wasn't just a long tunic. Oh, Mr. India, it's not comfortable at all.
I was sure you only had one hump. So, so, so can we say that? I don't know if you can say
Yeah,
that.
you could say it.
But yeah, I mean, talk about chafing, mate. Off into the desert, and
Yeah.
the rhythm by which you're walking is not exactly the most comfortable, even if you're wearing cycling shorts with extra padding.
Yeah, especially if your camel's got a limp as well. Really
Yeah.
throws you off.
So yeah, I mean, it was about 45 minutes to an hour out into the desert onto these sand dunes, and by the time I got off, mate, my goodness, it was
Yeah.
it was a bit of a struggle. But there you go. It was lovely. We had, just to round off, we had an amazing night under the stars. It wasn't as clear as I would have liked, to be completely honest. There was a bit of a haze, there was some light pollution off in the distance. We had some wicked food actually that was cooked just over a fire, and then we woke up nice and early the next morning.
So would your advice
Go on.
to the audience be that you should always wear underwear when riding a camel?
Yes. Yeah, I actually think the camp I sit in now is, if you make a judgment call at the time and you feel like you've got enough information, then maybe riding a camel might be okay. They seemed fine. I don't know if I'm just in denial trying to justify
I think
it to
you
myself,
are, because you always say that riding a horse is as bad as riding an elephant. You've said that to me in the past. So
I think it's always it's the way they're ridden as well. And I know that these are used for touristic purposes, just to ship sort of people out to the desert and back, which maybe isn't great, but they do also live like wild. Once if they're not working, these camels, if they're not doing the jaunt out to the desert, they just untie them and they're just walking around the desert. So if you are going to use animals, maybe that's as close as I can sort of get. But I would say definitely do wear underwear, maybe wear extra padding, and hold on tight.
Well, let's think about that, the ethical conundrum, as we go on a brief meditation break. Like a camel, treading, hot-footing it through the desert, allow your conscious mind to return into your brain. Mate, I've had a little thinking and meditate. I think with all these ethical conundrum, animal rights stuff, I think the important thing is that you're aware of the problematic nature of it as you're engaging in the activity. If you do it with a conscious mind and think, how can I be a better traveler? How can I, make sure everything I'm doing is ethical, responsible, and cared for? I think you're on the right path, even if, occasionally we do go to Oman and gorge ourselves on camel meat and break our vegetarian principles in order to culturally experience what place that we're in.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you don't want to be completely sort of selfish and just do things for the sake of doing them so that you can tell the story about it. And you have to kind of weigh it up. God, do you remember that episode that we haven't released yet? We must have recorded that almost a year ago now.
Food Olympics, are you talking about?
No, the elephant ride in northern Thailand.
Oh, yeah. There's an episode, Tripology, that is released on our Patreon. We recorded it about a year ago, and it tells the story of a friend of Adam's going on an elephant ride in Thailand. And my goodness, do we slate the practice. And, I still vehemently believe it's absolutely terribly, terribly wrong. Never ride elephants. Never go to all those elephant sanctuaries in Thailand, all that stuff. So, yeah, Adam, I think... let's round that debate off and continue with the story from your time in Rajasthan.
Yeah, so as you know, mate, I mean, if there's ever going to be an eventful time, it's a road trip around India, a road trip around Rajasthan. And not everything always goes to plan, which is fine. But there was one day when we decided to drive poor Lakesh. I mean, we did speak to him at length beforehand, and I said, are you sure you're capable of driving for that long? So I really don't. I don't want you to be I know it's your job, but I don't want you to be driving for longer than a few hours at a time without breaks and stuff. He was like, no, it's okay, it's fine. So we did this like mammoth journey over about 10 hours in one day, and ended up reaching this region around Ranakpur, where not too far away from there is lovely shrines, temples, and a fort. And we had booked a hotel. It was middle of the road, kind of mid-range, nothing to write home about, but it was it was fine. It was good enough for us. Unfortunately, it just got later and later and later because of a number of delays. The journey just took much longer than we thought it would, And then we ended up going through the dark roads, through these, there was like construction and stuff that was stopping us. Then, of course, the aforementioned snake that happened on this journey. So that held us up for about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we ended up climbing to the area that we were staying in. The accessibility is not great. Zigzagging up these mountain roads in the pitch black. No other cars around. Very, very quiet. Some of the road had fallen away. I mean, it was crazy. We were driving right on the left-hand side, almost up the bank, because half of the road had just like disappeared, like a sinkhole or something. I'm hanging on for dear life. I was actually so scared. I got in the front of the car.
What's Lakesh's vibe like? Is he stressed or is he just handling it?
He was also very stressed because he didn't want to be in that area. He understood the threat of the local area being down a dark road and with tourists and that kind of stuff. Yeah. He also was incredibly tired, and he was ripping around these hairpins much faster than I felt comfortable. And the seatbelts.
Did you feel like he was prepared to break his principles if perhaps he saw another mongoose? Do you think there was a time where he'd be like, okay, we're not waiting for another vehicle, I'm going to have to just...
Well, I thought he'd do that with the snake, and he didn't. So, yeah, I mean, it's about getting your priorities straight, I guess.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was pretty bad. The road was in terrible condition, and then it got even worse, and just lots of construction. The road didn't have like a surface on it. It just became a gravel road with lots of bumps and potholes and that kind of stuff, and incredibly steep. Now, you will remember that on our road trip around sort of Kasol and that region, around Himachal Pradesh, lots of the cars use CNG, right? Compressed natural gas.
Yeah. Yeah, for those that don't know, it's sort of like a special engine that you pop in your car, and it means that the car can run off compressed natural gas, which some people think's good for the environment.
But if the AC's on at the same time in these little pokey cars, then they can't get up a hill. So our car was stuttering, and then Lakesh put the handbrake on, and because we didn't have enough power to get up, and then he was just wheel spinning towards the edge of the bloody cliff. And I thought, that's it. I'm getting out. We're going to have to turn around, and our car just can't make it up, right? It just wasn't able. It didn't have the power. It was very sort of underfoot. It was incredibly dangerous, very slippy. So we decided to turn back. The way to get to our hotel was an hour and a half detour. Now we had to go right the way back on ourselves and all the way round to try and get there. So we just binned it off. It was 1 a.m. Alan. I made a decision. I said, this is it. We're staying somewhere else. Let's just try and get a bed for the night.
Are you the leader in a situation like that?
Well, I think so. I think you have to be. You have to make a call, don't you? It's not worth wasting more time. We've got the money, so just get somewhere safe. Yeah. And we managed to reverse the car back. God, it was treacherous. And then started driving down. And the first place we came across was a place called Mountbatten Lodge in the Ranakpur area. Now, I am going to out them live on air. I didn't think I'd do this, but I've since spoken to the manager of the hotel.
Yeah, okay. He's peeved you.
Yeah. Get this, mate. It's awful. So we drove down, only about 5-7 minutes, something like that. Came to this lovely property, Mountbatten Lodge. Lovely property. It really is. Gated entrance. We arrived at 1 a.m. We entered the property, and then we asked the security guards on duty, do you have any rooms available? And they said, did you book something online? And we said, no, we've just arrived. And this is all in Hindi, by the way, because Lakesh and my friend are Indian and they speak Hindi. So everything was kind of being translated back to me, and they were just explaining the story, the car journey, the road we couldn't get through, the previous hotel, all this sort of stuff. All we need is a room for the night. And the guards were digging their heels in. They were so arrogant and so rude. They said, if you haven't booked anything online, you can't stay here. And we were like, can you check if there's a room available? And they wouldn't even check if there was a free room for us to then book online. It was such a crazy experience, really unaccommodating, really unhelpful. They then just walked off and completely ignored us. And then eventually when they came back, they said that the room would be the equivalent of $450 for one night, which is absolutely extraordinary.
Right, it's unheard of. It's just a lie, isn't it?
It's a lovely property, but my goodness, if it's that expensive, I'd be really surprised. And I could hear, actually, there was another guard who I think was the senior of the one that we were dealing with for the most part. And it was translated to me that the senior was basically telling the other guard that we were dealing with not to help us, just refusing to give us any sort of aid or help or listen to us or anything like that. I eventually got his attention. He came round the corner, and then my friend said, can we just use your phone to call our hotel so they know that we're not coming, and we can try and maybe use your Wi-Fi to look for a different hotel? Because none of us had network. We were out in the middle of nowhere. And they said no.
Wow.
And I've never, ever experienced customer service like it. I don't even know if what I'm doing it justifies how it felt. I mean, not necessarily justifies, but expresses it in the way that it was unfolding, because it was like human to human at that point, right? We are in distress. We've got nowhere to stay. It's 1 a.m. We've had an awful day. Can you please just let us use your Wi-Fi for 5 minutes so we can inform the people we need to, and maybe find somewhere else to stay if you're not going to let us stay here? And they kept on saying, online bookings only. If you're not a guest, we can't help. And I just
Could you not just do the online booking and just be like, there, we did it?
No, I mean, by that point, mate, it had already escalated. So I'm not paying $450 for a room.
Yeah, I don't think that was the price. It's not dissimilar from the experience we had in Ahmedabad, right? When we were trying to find a place, we ended up sleeping in a hospital.
Yeah, well, yeah, not even that. I mean, it was the canteen that was outside, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, really unfortunate. And then I went, we went on with our day. We ended up staying in somewhere, mate, that had so many lizards in the room. It was crazy. It was
cheaper than $450, was it?
Very much so, yeah. But it was crazy. It was like huge high ceilings, haunted house. The guard that, we managed to wake up to try and let us in, we almost got attacked by a stray dog. It was just a mental 24 hours, but we got our heads down for, a couple of hours and then went on our way. But the amount of lizards in that room, it was crazy. The only thing, just insects and everything in that region. Yeah, crazy time. But I spoke to the manager of the hotel. I phoned them up the next day. And initially he seemed concerned, and he said, I'm going to get to the bottom of it. I'm going to speak to the guards, because we had the guards' names as well. And
you spoke to the manager of the horrible hotel?
Yeah, Mountbatten Lodge. Spoke to him the next day. He said,
he was upset.
He said, I'm ever so sorry. That's unacceptable. I'm really sorry you had that experience. That shouldn't have been the case. Let me get to the bottom of it, because I gave him the guards' names. And he said, I'll give you a call back immediately. Never happened. So...
Okay, so you've decided to use the Tripological platform to put on blast.
Well, I just think, we're going to do some Google reviews and stuff. I would say if that's the sort of service you're going to receive of even a high-end hotel, and people can't just be sort of kind and throw you a bone when you need it most, I think that's a bit of a shame. So we talk about all the good, but sometimes it's bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, I'm glad you're enjoying your time in Rajasthan still. I'm glad you're getting up to all sorts of adventures. I would like to hear a little bit about all the food that you've been having. I know people are long awaiting the return of rice for breakfast, but we'll have to do that on next week's episode, my friend, because, I've got to go and see this river. 2 rivers that collide alongside each other. One white in colour, one black in colour, but never the twain shall meet. What an interesting geological feature to see here in Georgia. I'll tell you a little bit about that on next week. Also, I'm preparing to go to Armenia. That's right. Yeah, another country what I've not been to yet that I'm about to go to. There'll be all sorts of stories. So you'll hear about that. You'll hear about Adam's food choices in Rajasthan. If you can wait for that, then check yourself, because you shouldn't be able to wait. You should be desperate. You should go there right now. And you can find out more about Tripology Podcast. All you have to do now is go to your little Google search engine, type 3 W's and a dot, and then it's tripologypodcast.com. You've got Rice for Breakfast blog. You've got Tales of a Trip, a travel blog. You've got a contact form where you can go, excuse me, Adam and Alan, what's the best waterfall you've ever seen up close? That sort of question. Type that into the contact form. Head there. But for now, we're going to go to the Patreon section.
Patreon.com/Tripology Podcast, where there's a lost and found. That's when, it all gets a little bit crazy. We get a little bit loose, don't we, mate?
Yep, sometimes I take my top off, so we'll see what happens this week. Maybe I will. Some people were about to go to Patreon and now have gone, nah, we'll leave it. For now.
We do crazy things like put the aircon back on and open doors and windows and have a sip of coffee and that kind of stuff. But guys, honestly, thanks so much for listening. If you have got the time, please rate and review the show. It really helps us out.
Yeah, on whatever platform you're listening to right now, just click rate 5 stars. Thanks. Bye. Cool. We'll see you next week, guys.
Love you loads. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.